to this Momentum Technologies of an exciting, brand new review showcase on gas stations. Or if you're an international viewer not located in the United States, I will be talking about fuel stations. Now, for any American unfamiliar for that extinction, it's because of purely chemistry and science. They find it hysterical when we use terms like gas when it's liquid petroleum we're using, which is not a gas, it's not aerated. However, kind of goes into culture and how everyone does everything. Simply today, I wanted to dive into the history of gas stations. Recently, at least in the area that we currently live in, of Houston, Texas, everything that's being torn down or cleared for a new business is a gas station coming soon, including a gas station I saw the other day that apparently was getting set up in a vacant Walgreens building, stating that not only it was going to be an Exxon fuel station, but with a Popeyes, which I thought was interesting since there was a Popeyes 2 doors down from said location. So I felt like there needed to be a little bit of a curious, take or at least look into something that many, you know, not living in the United States would put as a synonymous, physical, visual representation of the United States. So why not jump into it? Our introduction begins simply. We're going to go into the history of gas stations. We're going to talk about how they are built and why they are built with such ease it appears to any other type of business. So hopefully you'll have fun in this information whenever you grab hold of it in your own life. Otherwise, this comes from at least the last 6 months of research and basically what I found to be highly interesting. As you can see, this information was ready to be presented on July 17th, but only within the past 5 days have I come across the information that I felt that was needed to properly execute this review showcase for you all. Now, with a cup of coffee, I'm going to wet the whistle, and we're going to try our best to do this. This by far will probably be one of the loosest review showcases you have seen since I'm doing it on the fly and it's not a prepared monologue as I normally have done in the past. Now, as I get my information ready to present. So, roughly, how everything goes in the world, so to speak at least. Gas stations at least first appeared in the United States around 1980. Or I mean 1890, I'm sorry about that. And it's not that gasoline or fuel was not ever present before, it was just sold randomly at any locations, whether it was a refinery, a shipyard. That's where gas stations first became fictional. I mean, not fictional, non-fictional. It was around 1890 in the United States. And I'm not happy with the bouncing as I write, but hopefully we can make this work. Now, 1890 is where gas stations first started showing up. Now, it's not until post-World War II where the gas station or the fuel station that we know today has been synonymous with what we expect it to be. Now, Sinclair's gas stations of the Midwest and West are the only representation of what gas stations were designed to be built and looking. Pretty much they're the last examples. So the Sinclairs have the last living examples of the old gas stations. Of the olden times. And what I call the 1950s boom of gas stations, as we know, with Route 66 and everything else in between. So when does the heyday of business expansion hit for gas stations? It's roughly around 1970s. And I'll try my best not to reference the 1972 Madrid International Trademark Laws during this period, but it is fun to bring up in this context and so forth. But specifically in 1972, which again the Madrid International Copyright Laws were established, is when OPEC and the embargoes began for the United States. In which also the decline of self-serving gas stations began to decline. New Jersey is still proprietor of self-serve out of all the states in the United States. So we can consider this part of the rise and fall of gas stations in a business sense. But by the 1980s is when the convenience store model, or the convenience store model, began to take over. Or at least began. Actually, and what we know as the 1990s to 2000s as the 7-Eleven boom, as I will call it, of where the convenience store model really took hold into American culture as we see it today. And now currently, just to bring it all into context, in 2026 is where the new convenience retail model is being heavily used. And what I mean by this is where it goes from just simply being a fuel station to being an all-in-one store. You can reference Buc-ee's as one of those models, as they are not considered a fuel station. They are a travel center, is what many gas stations are converting to do now, including 7-Eleven. They are becoming more of a travel station than an actual fuel station, with many lowering their store square footage retail space into one attribute of minor efficiencies. But this is also the time where stuff as EV and digital products and services are beginning to become the norm, making up roughly the 60% of increased in non-fuel spendings. Or otherwise, what they're going to be calling mobility hubs. Now, with that short bit of history, let's dive into the why of even this review showcase. Now, in 95, roughly, I remember being a child of kindergarten and first grade being told that we had 50 years of oil stockpiled. So if there was ever another embargo again, we would not hit the fuel crisis that we have seen referenced so much time in the 70s and the 80s. So I began wondering, with it being 2026, that do we have roughly 13 or 17 years left of oil, kind of thing. Let's see, 2005, 2015, 2018. So yeah, basically we're under 20 years of fuel left by that assessment. And we are going to find out that we do not have that much oil left. Now, let's get back into the why. Why are gas stations built? Well, simply, they are recession proof. And recession proof, as I misspell it, typically means you sell items that people will buy no matter how much money they have in their pocket. If that sounds familiar. Which items considered as bread, milk, coffee, eggs, gas slash fuel, however you want to call it, and etc. These are items of recession proof. You can almost argue that gas stations are recession proof, but you have to have basically more or one of these items to be able to be considered a recession proof business, which is why gas stations get so much more proving from bank loans than other businesses. As I give an example of other businesses here very shortly. Now I want to dive back into, as this is the why with our agenda, we're going to go into the how. How are gas stations built above anything else? Mainly through SBA loans. My B looks horrible. Under the 7A or 504 loans. Is how they're mainly built. They're also built under conventional commercial loans, and equipment financing and leasing. A weird joke is I'm writing a lot of I's and I'm having trouble keeping up with them all as I write, so this is a bit of hysterical. Which, with all these, is also included with owner financing and, of course, any backing parties of a financial nature to stand from the profit of your business. Now, the best part about recession-proof businesses, it does not require specialized skills or advanced formal training, meaning anyone and anyone can run one of these. You don't even need a high school diploma. So another reason why this business, or even franchising of this business, is more lucrative for anyone and more common for anyone who's stepping into the business world to open and run themselves with very little effort and setup with instant sales. I'll also get into profit margins of how much they actually make off the gas here as well. I'm covering all points. Just a lot of information we got to put out all at once. But this is essentially the how, or the why and the how they are built. And so, let's get into a bit of the history epilogue. As I said, looking at this is basically the rise and fall of our fuel stations and gas stations currently. Now, my interest became purely out of business expansion. When I'm seeing that every project being built in a city is gas stations, and a lot of them being backed by banks, it makes me wonder how? Simply how? Well, I'll give you my joke. When I look at the rise and fall of gas stations, if there is going to be a fall, I'm reminded of the first business of a major level to be scrutinized by it. And that, of course, is McDonald's. Now, why would the history of McDonald's be something important for anyone investing in a gas station to be interested in? To give you an idea, it cost roughly $2 million to open a McDonald's. And now I know there's going to be questions, well, what if you franchise or buy a store from someone else? Fair game. You're still going to have to pay that amount because you're going to have to buy out the owner for that store or his stores. And along with franchising fees with McDonald's. But I will get into this history of how McDonald's is making money today. Now, McDonald's boom essentially was from the I've been doing that a lot lately, writing my sixes before my nines. It was essentially between the 1960s and the 1990s is where McDonald's business boom really took place, or we can consider growth. But by the 2000s, I should state, is where McDonald's, in order to increase profits to themselves, so let's call it from, around 2002 is when their decline began with overall customers and sales. So by 2015, McDonald's came up with their refranchising program and selling corporate stores to already McDonald's owners, if not new patrons of the McDonald's family. And this is how McDonald's has sustained their growth to this very day. From refranchising in 2015 to where they are now. Now, another business to consider that went through all this as well are Subways. And their history is kind of along the same lines. Now, you only need $250,000 to open up a Subway. Now, Subway's rise to fame came in the 1990s. And by 2016 was the start of their death due to overexpansion in what they would call cannibalism or cannibalism markets, where too many Subways were set up too close to each other, where they were hindering each other's sales. I would say this is their boom, and this is the start of decline. Basically, the start of store closures and expansion from overexpansion happened in the 1960s. The reason why today Subways are even reporting profits and if not successes is due to international expansion, mainly in airports and out of United States markets. By the time I do this next time, I will figure out this wiggle. And so basically, to give you an idea, the costs required to open up a gas fuel station are typically around 500K. Ooh, that's an ugly U. So looking at the numbers, why are more people opening gas stations compared to McDonald's or Subway? That's because they are not recession proof, as we remember earlier. Gas stations fall under that because they sell bread, milk, eggs, coffee, gas and fuel, and other items. McDonald's just provides food. They might have bread, they might have eggs, but they do not have the full kit and caboodle to fall under recession proof. Subway's the same way. They might have bread, they might have eggs, but they do not have everything else to make it recession proof. Gas stations, cleverly, do. They sell everything. Everything needed to keep up the recession proof. Now, I'm going to add some information I did forget to add, but I think it's pretty interesting nonetheless if I can get away with it. So we were talking about overexpansion. Do gas stations experience it? Believe it or not, since the 1950s, we still have less gas stations than we did in the 1950s. So, in terms of overexpansion, compared to the number of gas stations in the 1950s, which was roughly around 14,000, today's numbers only puts gas stations just under the mark, I should add, of 13,000. Doesn't necessarily confirm nor deny that gas stations are on a decline. I can only say that by technical real estate and land value and classification, we still have less gas stations or mobility fuel stations now than we did in the 1950s. Now, let's get into the fun stuff. And I'll go ahead and put this place card out, because some people might have seen it already if you saw my earlier posts. But basically, this is the information that started my question of, do we really have 50 years of oil? Boom. You'll see this card come back, so don't even worry. It'll pop back up. As I'm getting myself together, as I give you these world numbers of gas stations. Now, running a gas station, I'm sure there's some interesting numbers I could put in here for you real quick. So the average owner only makes about 3 cents to 7 cents USD per gallon is all a gas station roughly makes a day, or roughly makes per gallon. Now, compared to places like Buc-ee's and Costco, they roughly sell, oh yeah, so at this rate, the local gas station will sell, I don't have to put that information there. At this rate, a local gas station will sell roughly 2,500 gallons of gas or fuel for our international viewers. Places like I said, Buc-ee's and Randall's and Costco and Walmart and stuff will sell at least 10 times that amount in a day. As a normal gas station can sell roughly 2,500 gallons of fuel, the big boys can sell up to 10 times as much. And so with that, with the average gas station owner, they roughly only make 60K to 100K net a year, with some of the highest reports being 300K a year. So, for anyone who thought the gas station man is rich, he's not. He's primarily middle class or upper middle class. He basically makes more than 50K a year, which is more than 70% of the population. So you're in the top 30% as a gas station owner. Middle upper class. Now, let's get into the fun stuff, the facts of it all. As we get into our itinerary here, how much gas do we use? Well, this section is going to be fun. Not to sound like Bob Ross all excited, I kind of am. Want to do a little spacing here for everyone. So, roughly in the United States, we use around 375 million dollars buying fuel. Buying and selling fuel, I should say. Which equals into roughly 8.9 million barrels of oil a day. So if you go on to the stock trade and you see oil's a barrel for $90, boom, you can see where that number comes from, kind of thing. And out of this usage of oil, 91% of it mainly goes to automobiles. I really thought airplanes would take more, but no. Automobiles still eat up the most of that usage every day of buying and selling fuel. Now, on the world stage, as we will call it here, kind of a bad point to write that, but I kind of wanted to do one of these. And then I made it round, of all things. But on the world stage, we go through 105 million barrels of oil as the planet Earth. Meaning the United States, with roughly 9 million, only takes up 20% of the world's purchases of or usage of oil. So as I said, the US, we take roughly 20% out of that, which equals, as we know, the 8.9, but I'm just going to write it as 9 million barrels. And for fun, I'll just go ahead and add China uses roughly 17 million barrels of oil, with India being the third most user at 5 million barrels of oil. Sorry, I'm going into my notes here. And if anyone was curious how much oil we, the United States, has been taking out of Venezuela, because I was curious about that, with the 2026 Venezuelan de facto rule. But just know this number goes into the world number. But I figured it'd be fun to add how much do we take from Venezuela? Which apparently, oh, don't get my numbers wrong. Oh, so we take roughly 43% of oil exported out of Venezuela since 2026, which is roughly roughly around 1 million barrels of oil, or hold up, that 43% equals $65 million, and roughly 1 million barrels of oil, or 100, yeah, 13 plus. Oh, so I'm sorry, 150 million barrels of oil. That was my fault, people. 150. Oh, that looks horrible. My first mistake. But that happens on writing a big piece like this. Don't always get it right. We use roughly that about much. And as I say here, so what does that add down to the United States? Coming back to our question here. Do we really have 50 years of oil like I was told in 95? Well, surprisingly, this is what it comes down to. Since the creation of OPEC, of basically, 1970, 1972, and 1975, we created a standard and created a stockpile to be able to hold roughly 714 million barrels of oil. As of August 7th, we were at 298.7 million barrels of oil. With the recent presidential order of releasing 172 barrels of oil, we are now currently, in my estimations, at 126.7 million barrels of oil. And using the statistic of the United States daily use of 9 million barrels of oil, depending on embargo or complete sabotage or destruction of our oil reserves, we technically only have 14 days of oil. So coming back to the main question of all this, are gas stations profitable? If banks are willing to finance someone to take all the risks, in which in the end they end up acquiring the property from the person if the gas station fails, and if we're turning everything into gas stations, when we only have a confirmed supply of 14 days of oil, why are we investing in it as heavily as we are? Like I said, with stores like McDonald's, Subway, and 7-Eleven all facing what's now called the lawnmower effect, where they're drastically lowering their store footprints. This could be seen evident with the Popeyes closures, the Family Dollar closures, the Papa John's closures. Every and all American businesses are shutting down left and right in what they're calling the lawnmower effect, where they're completely removing their excess fat to try to survive. So my question is, are banks investing in the land to take eventually when the business fails? Or are we trying to find ways to store gas in multiple places? Like I said, my question is, if we only have 14 days of oil left, how are we supposed to convince ourselves as a consumer, or if not an entrepreneur, to invest the next 30 to 50 years of our life on a product that there's only 14 days worth of? So my question really becomes, is it recession proof if that product can't be guaranteed longer than 14 days? And with that, everyone, I conclude to you this review showcase. Hopefully you found it informative. I certainly did. And hopefully this allows you to go through your day, hopefully knowing how you should move and when you should move. Otherwise, thank you so much for this opportunity before I can showcase at least a little bit of what Momentum Technologies does on a day-to-day basis, if not hour to hour, depending on curiosity and client requests. Otherwise, peace and joy love, everyone, and have a great day today.